Good evening. So tonight, I was thinking about this for the last week of what topic I may want to have here for the videos. And one video I wanted to make was to talk about heating old buildings. What would be the best way to lower your energy cost on these older buildings with no insulation and that sort of stuff. But then the more pressing political situation here in the United States got me to think about this whole thing with Kamala Harris and how she's getting in there now and how far removed this actually is from a true democratic process, which we normally have here in the United States. And for that, I want to explain this real quick on how this normally works to the viewers outside the United States, which are not familiar with our process of the primaries, what we call them. That is a election or process where we are determining on who the presidential candidate is going to be for either one of the parties. And the process here in the United States is quite simple. When you sign up for a voter registration card or when you register as a voter, they will usually ask you if you are a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, or an independent or other. So you can declare whatever party you may want to belong to, or you can just say none, no information, not affiliated. That will entitle you then to vote in the primaries, depending on which party you selected. The party membership, so to speak, doesn't cost any money because we donate then money to our political cause. And let me just see if, now it's straight. I got that line in the middle there, which tells me if the camera is in level. And it is now. So, but anyway, so we vote then by the party for the presidential candidate of our choice, and according to who is going to run. And that is usually a process where they have the first candidates, announcing their interest or their willingness to run as a presidential candidate the year prior to the election. So in this case here with Kamala Harris, she had announced that sometimes in 2019 that she wanted to run as a presidential candidate, and she got onto the papers and the ballots not on the ballots, but she got all the signatures she needed for every state, 50 states, to be accepted as a potential candidate. Now, I have to say one thing is, in the voter registration, when you register this, the party's headquarters or the party organizations, they will get your name at that point when you register in the state you're registering in, because the elections is a state matter, not a federal matter. So all the ballots and all of the organizational stuff and everything that comes with it is organized by the states and their respective counties and cities. So in this case now, the Kamala Harris indicated she wanted to run. And in June 2019, we had a presidential candidate debate for the Democratic contenders of the Democratic Party. That was Bloomberg, that was Harris, she was one of them, Biden, Sanders, Warren, Buttigieg, and I think there was one or two more people in there. And the first televised debate was in June of 2019, and Kamala came in third in the polls after that debate, right after Sanders, who was leading, Biden, and then Harris, and then came Bloomberg, and then Buttigieg. I think that's roughly how it went. However, they had a couple more debates on televised debates, and by December, I think, November or December of 2019, she had actually gone down to 3% in the polls. And at that point, she decided to drop out of the race altogether before she ever got onto the ballots for the primary elections in 2020. The primary elections are held from January on until about the middle of the year, and then they're concluded at the party convention, where they then nominate the candidate, and that candidate accepts it. So just what we had here with Donald Trump just a week ago, I think it was, and the Democrats are due to do the same thing in August, so next month. So she never made it onto the ballot of the primaries. And Biden came out in early 2020 and he announced he would have an African-American woman as a vice president. So that was clear then. So then the speculation started, who could it be? And of course, some people guessed it would be Harris, Kamala Harris. And that's how it then turned out. And then in 2020, in the end, Biden won the primaries, or had the most delegates. And then he was nominated at the party convention. When we vote for these candidates, respectively to our parties we belong to or we have signed up for, what we usually do is each party from the state then sends delegates to the party convention who will cast the votes at the party convention according to the election results of the primary in that state. Now, with Kamala Harris now, we have never had a chance, or I shouldn't say we, I'm not a Democrat, so I'm kind of a outsider, but the Democrats, registered voters as Democrats here in the United States, have never casted one vote for her in either the 2020 primaries or the 24 primaries for her as a presidential contender, as a presidential candidate for the Democratic Party. All she has now, and I'm not quite sure on how they're going to deal with this, is the delegates. They're basically, we had from this year's primary, the ticket was Biden. Biden as president, he would be the one who would be voted for at the party convention next month with the selected vice president. The party itself has no control over the vice president. That is the choice of the presidential candidate who then gets nominated on who he's going to pick as a running mate. So basically, Kamala Harris has now circumvented the entire basic election, or how should I say this, the input of the Democratic voter base. We have no clue except for the polls we had in 2019, where she had first 15% of the, poll was polling 15% after the first debate, and then had fallen down to 3% of the registered Democratic voters of who they may vote for. And this was only a poll. She has never been officially on a ballot. And now my question is, how do you want to deal with this? Okay, I understand that the time we have is of essence here. And the party convention is only, I think, 6 weeks away or something like this, in that range. And I don't think the Democratic Party is not going to be able to pull off a other primary, in all 50 states, where they could actually formally put Kamala Harris on a ballot, and other candidates who may want to run now as well as presidential candidates against her. So this is kind of all circumvented. So the Kamala Harris has been given now to the Democratic Party without ordinary party members being able to voice their opinion, whether they want her as a presidential candidate or not. We don't know. We simply don't know. The endorsements don't mean anything. It is the individual Democratic Party member or registered voter as a Democrat who has the actual say in this normally. But the way this whole thing has now gone down, with Biden deciding not to or to drop out in the last minute, literally, and Kamala Harris being pushed into this without having any type of input from the party base or from ordinary voters, in this case, who are registered as Democrats. Now, the delegates, the Democratic Party normally selects and who vote according to the primary results in that state, they have a clause that they have to only obey by their conscience. So even though they have a mandate sort of from the primary results in the primary election of that state to vote a certain way at the party convention, they could change their mind or their vote at that party convention. But it has never been practiced. Usually this is our democratic process. It's a safety measure. It's just these checks and balances we have. And in this case, it never has been exercised. At this point, I do not know who she is trying to persuade. The delegates or the voter base, which is not going to vote for her in a primary. So I don't understand of what this whole circus they're doing now is all about. In that sense, there is no more election process in there where the broad public is involved at this point, because the delegates are hand-selected people by usually the Democratic Party's higher-ups in that state, elected or, party leaders, so to speak, in that state of the Democratic Party. So these people are not ordinary voters. And that makes this whole thing very questionable. And it kind of appears like the old, that's why I put the headline in, old East German way by, appointing a successor, then the central, the Politburo, the central committee, the Politburo gives the order on who's going to be the next boss, basically, so to speak. And this is something what we're looking at. The similarities is unreal. The Politburo, so to speak, here in the United States is Obama, both Clintons, that lady Pelosi from California, and Chuck Schumer. That is pretty much the primary, the commission, so to speak, of the Democratic Party. And Biden is sort of part of this, but he's not on the inner circle. The absolute top leaders here, the two Clintons, Obama, especially Obama, and then Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Without these people, nothing moves in the Democratic Party. And it looks like it that these five people, Obama, Clintons, that's 3, Pelosi 4, Schumer 5. These 5 people basically have dictated now to the entire Democratic voter base of who their presidential candidate is. That's the reality, what we're looking at. That is just food for thought. So, I'm like I said, I'm neither a Democrat nor a Republican, so to speak. I'm a libertarian. And for me, this is very troubling. If I was a Democrat and I would not be as institutionalized as most of these voters are, mentally institutionalized, because I have a sense of freedom, I would say, no, this is not going to fly. I'm not happy with it. I would probably postpone the party convention next month and do this late September, early October, which is still enough time, and go to another primary and let other contenders come in and then see who's going to be the one who's going to be the elected presidential candidate for the Democratic Party, because that's the democratic process. I mentioned it before in my other video. In 2020, at the first presidential debate between Trump and Biden, when Biden said this with the oil raining onto the windshield while his mother was driving him to school, I knew that this guy wasn't wrapped tight upstairs. And I was questioning at that point the mental capabilities. The Democratic Party, when he ran with Obama for vice president and an Obama ticket, they called him the crazy uncle in the attic. And I guess that was acceptable enough for the majority of the voter base. Now, I personally do not want the crazy uncle in the attic running the country I live in, I work in, and I pay taxes. That is something I just wanted to make clear. And I sure do not trust him with making the right decision of who's going to be the vice president, and then having that person without any democratic process being presented to us on a election ballot. In the election, we will see what they're going to vote for in November. But I can assure you that this year is going to be the craziest year you have ever seen in many, many ways. And that what we have seen so far is nothing what is going to come late October and then into November and December. Other than that, I wish you a great weekend, and I will make the video about this heating stuff maybe tomorrow night or maybe next weekend. We will see how it goes. And if you wondered why I haven't shaved, it's called pure laziness. I'm getting older and I'm tired after so many decades standing every morning in front of the mirror and shaving. So I just said I'm going to let it go a little bit. Maybe I'm going to shave tomorrow morning. Next video I will be shaved again. You have a great night.